Friends, a little bit behind the scenes before we get started today. So a couple months ago, Toyota reaches out and says, hey, you should come to Texas and drive our new Toyota, what used to be a Scion. And as you can imagine, I'm a Lotus guy. I do track days. I wasn't particularly excited, but I thought this was something different. But then I turned up in Texas and I meet the man behind the car. And yeah, we'll get to this, but what car do you have at home?
Supra.
And what car do you race at Suzuka, or just raced at Suzuka?
Single-seater tubular frame racing car.
And this is the chief engineer behind this car. Okay, so let's see what Kobo-san's got in store for us underneath here. This is a 2-liter, 4-cylinder gasoline engine. No turbo, no fancy stuff. It is good for 144 horsepower, which comes in at a very aggressive 6,100 RPM, and 139 pound-feet of torque, which comes in at 3,900 RPM. It is strapped to anything you want as long as it's a CVT. I did have a conversation with Kobo-san about the logic behind this, and what I found out was Toyota has been doing CVTs for 15 years now. The first car they deployed it in was a Corolla, and their strategy is different than what Nissan does, in that cars that are below 2.5 liters, they're going to be doing CVTs exclusively, and cars that are above 2.5 liters, they get geared transmissions. So what we'll do is we'll try that in the full first drive review. Now let's put this aside and let's unpack some of the bits that affect driving dynamics. Here I need to tell you a story before we get into the actual name, rank, and serial number of driving dynamics. So Kobo-san was given this project, and he has a significant racing background, so he had all these ideas that he wanted to do with a B segment car, which is what this car started out as. So Toyota has this whole thing of this Toyota new global architecture dash something. So it's TNGNA or something like that. This was going to be on the B segment car, which underpins the Yaris. But he wanted a fancy rear suspension. He wanted to change all sorts of things about the driving dynamics. And finally, the bean counters went to him and said, look, we're not saying no, but you want to make too many changes to an existing platform. How about you wait for the TNGA-C, which, believe it or not, underpins a Prius. So this and a Prius are kind of related. And the whole logic is very similar to like the MQB or what Volvo does with that scalable product architecture, which is not a hard and fast platform. It's a set of toolkits that interconnect to make different size and categories of cars. So here is a not quite size C segment car that is built off a C segment platform. And there's a reason for that. So for example, there's McPherson struts in the front, not really surprised, but instead of what a Yaris has back here, which is a terrible torsion beam suspension, which you and I don't like, this one has double wishbones in the rear, which he was able to adapt onto the C platform, even though the Prius has a torsion beam. Then, this guy being a track guy, instead of doing the usual dampers that they do in Toyotas, Kobo-san actually changed the supplier of the dampers to get a little firmer ride in this, a sort of B, C segment car. So you can kind of see where they're going with all this and step back and look at some of the design here. And even I have to admit, this is a different kind of Toyota. It's even not a different kind of Scion when it was originally intended to be a Scion. So it's not really marketing mumbo jumbo. And if I really put my like pedantic designer eye on this thing, there's this whole theme of like these, remember what we did, the tessellated graphics on that Mazda SEMA build? That's kind of what they did here. These are tessellated lines through here. They call them diamond shaped. I would call them tessellated. And I kind of like the look, like even back here with the door handle hidden into the actual tessellation, makes it look, dare I say, cool for a Toyota. Now, the diamonds, very much repeated in here to the point where I'm almost dizzy. You've got it on the inset on the doors, underneath the armrests, the speaker grills, even up here on the headliner, and I don't even know why these are here, Very confusing. Let's put that aside. Now, this was going to be a Scion, which means it comes only one way. Well, now that it's a Toyota, it has really two different levels that are on offer. This one is the fancy one, so it has push-button start, power lumbar, heated seats, and that is really about it in terms of the fancy one. Now, the thing I want to point out here, this screen looks like it's a big screen with a navigation. Turns out there's no navigation or satellite radio on offer, but what they did do is a step towards moving away from distracted driving, which I think is interesting. The controls for the audio no longer work when you're driving. They're grayed out and everything moves to voice control. Yeah, you can use the steering wheel controls to go between tracks and radio stations, but overall, like going into finding like your playlist, that only goes to voice when the car is in motion. This is a very cool place to be, and here's why. There is this cool little dashboard, but most importantly, they've changed the feel by changing the level of the seat and the console. So the hip point sits lower than other crossovers, but then they've raised the console. And allow me to really geek out here. If you remember, we did Targa Newfoundland in one of my favorite cars of all time, a Challenger SRT8. This console looks like it came directly from a Challenger SRT8, even down to a cool shifter. Granted, it's not a pistol grip shifter, but look at the detail. It's like a low, almost like a Honda S2000 type shifter, but then they've even put this satin finish here. So it's not just the design overall, but some of the tactile feel of the details that really stand out here. Now, before we wrap up on this 181st birthday of the great state of Texas, yes, today, March 2nd, is Texas Independence Day, there's some things we need to cover, some rather important things, and those fall under the heading of things that are not on offer in the CHR. Number one, you know I'm going to complain about this. There is no sunroof, no moonroof, no panoramic, no nothing, whether it opens or closes, not on offer at all. Then, number two, this is a Toyota and I find it very strange, no hybrid on offer. And then number three, no manual transmission, at least on offer in the US. It is on offer in Europe. And then last, of course, I'm going to bring up the diesel thing if we're talking about Europe. Yes, it is available there, not available here. Not really that surprised about it. Now, there's a reason why I bring up all this stuff. Koba-san and I had a long conversation over dinner last night, and every time I talked about each one of these items, he was very honest in sharing, well, we decided on this package because of price. And think about what this competes with. It competes with the Honda HR-V, the Nissan Juke, and the coming Nissan Qashqai / Rogue Sport. So it's very much a price-sensitive area, so every one of those things adds a lot of cost. But I feel like some of them you kind of need, like all-wheel drive. So my question to you really is very simple. How much would you pay for each one of these things? How much would you pay extra for an all-wheel drive system? How much would you pay extra for a hybrid system? And would there be a call for like a special sporty version with a manual transmission? The last one's just for me, not for Koba-san. So let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, YouTube has done something incredibly stupid in that when you subscribe to me on YouTube, or really any creator on YouTube, you no longer get notified. You actually have to go and click subscribe, and you have to click notifications to find out when we actually have new episodes. So please hit notifications. And number two, a fun fact. So Koba-san, who you saw at the beginning of this episode, we shot a very short, quick, inside the MotoMan studio with him. This man is super cool. So you're gonna have to see that coming down the road. But I wanna give you a little hint of what's coming up. He worked with one of my favorite engineers of all time, chief engineer of the Supra, Yaguchi-san, who we shot like years ago on the RC episodes. And he not only worked with Yaguchi-san, but he was the test engineer when Yaguchi-san was developing the ISF. Until I see you next time, Bishpeta.